afternoon. So, today I want to talk about or comment on a conversation I had with a friend, and it all came, his friend from work, and it all came from like a meeting at work where it was a big general meeting. And one of the things that they were talking about as part of the meeting was the demographics of people working at the company. And so, as you might have guessed, being a company that produces software, a lot of the programmers are men. And that's just kind of, in the industry, that's just the way it is at the moment. And one of the things that was basically brought up is that, the workplace won't be fair until 50% of the programmers are women. And I can't, I just can't get my head around that. I don't really understand why that's fair, or why it's even something that we should, as a society, think that we need to work towards gender parity in all professional roles. And so I brought this up with my friend the day after the meeting because I genuinely respect his opinion, and he's not an anarchist or anything. He's pretty much what you call a normie, in terms of a very conventional person, which is good. It is actually quite good to know people like that, and have sorts of conversations with them, because it helps me understand somewhat what people what the general public, what people think, because I recognise that being an anarchist, it's not what most people are. Most people, when I say that, they think I might as well say that I've got two heads. It's that kind of level of radical. So I asked him, and I was genuinely curious as to what he thought about it. And so I was quite surprised. So his answer was, well, the way we bring up, the way children are brought up affects how they are. And so if girls are brought up being told that they can't be programmers, or that they won't be employed if they are, then you'll just have less programmers. And it's well, I kind of get that. It does seem obvious if that was the case. But, when is that the case? I don't understand why there's some obsession with, girls aren't men and women are only different because we force them to be. And it's there really are, there are differences in temperament between men and women, and interests, and lots of things. There's lots of things that are different between men and women. For instance, I'm colourblind, and it's about 10% of men are colourblind, but hardly any women are. It's very, very rare in women. I don't think I've ever met a girl who's colourblind, and I've met loads of colourblind men. But what's also interesting about being colourblind is it's heavily overrepresented in certain professions. Obviously not in that requires you to see colour. But things well, I worked at a place where one day we were just talking casually. I think the dev team, it was a small software company, and the dev team, there was about 10 of us approximately. And out of the 10, I think like 5 of us were colourblind. And so, that's, we would have expected it to just be 1 out of 10, approximately. But not 5 of us. And that was also, like, during doing physics, there was like a bunch of people, like, well more than, but physics, there was like, it was almost all guys doing physics, but there were girls. But there was, when we came to do lab tasks where we had to like mess about with resistors and stuff like that, and they were all colour coded, there were loads of us who had to say, I can't really do this. Because a whole bunch of us were colourblind. And even in like my PhD supervisor, he was colourblind, and like the head of department, the head of our group was colourblind, and it's just like a bunch of us. There was loads. More than 10% were all colourblind. So there seems to be some kind of like correlation between like certain, let's just say, dispositions and colour blindness. So, I mean, I didn't fit, so if we're like saying that the way we are brought up leads us to like certain, take on certain roles, like the whole reason that I became a physicist and a computer programmer was because I was treated differently because I was colourblind. Well, you might think, well, maybe there's some legs in that. But the thing is, I didn't realise that I was colourblind until quite late on. And it was only during like the school medical that you have when you're 16. I mean, I suspected that it was because, like, when you do those, you see those dot patterns, I can't remember what they're called, where like you see certain colours or certain numbers and things. And like I remember being in a class where like the teacher was holding them up and everyone's going 7 and I'm going 4. And I was just getting them all wrong. The only one I didn't get wrong was the one that was I think it's like a number in orange and the back's purple, something like that even dogs can see. It's one of them. That's kind of like the control test to just make sure that, to see if anyone's lying. And so this like school medical, when everyone else had it, I had chickenpox, so I couldn't like just do it at school. I had to go to it's like the clinic or something, and I went with my mum. And so my mum was in there, like when they did the colourblind test. And so when I was doing it and saying all the wrong numbers, my mum smacked me. She said, "Stop messing about." And the doctor said, I think he's actually colourblind. Because I was also getting it wrong in the right way. Apparently when you're colourblind, depending on like what type of colourblind you see, these are like set up to see certain colours and certain numbers. So like you can tell it's not just random. If someone's saying that it's a certain thing, it's like, you're not faking it. But anyway, I was like 16 at this point, so by then I was already programming computers at home, and I was already, had an interest in science, and I was already thinking that I was going to do a degree in physics. So before I actually found out all the traits that like coincide with colour blindness were already there. So, this kind of goes back to, so what about girls? What do we do that makes them not want to be computer programmers or something? And I just can't, I don't get it, I don't understand. I've got kids, I've got a boy and 2 girls, and they are very different. I mean, I know it's like, I don't want a small sample size and all that, but like, there are certain like, my 2 daughters are extremely different. The personality-wise, they're not the same at all. But like, there's this massive overlap between like the girliness of them and they're not even particularly girly girls, but you know, there's definitely there's like my son when he was born, you know, it like almost immediately they were just like different traits to him, you know, the way like he'd grab onto things and the way he'd like be fixated by a ball, and like the same ball that had been in the house for like all the kids, and like that we played with all the kids with the baby when they were babies, and he was just like, oh, you know. So you know, I do, you know, there just are intrinsic differences between, you know, men and women, but also what I brought up with my friend was like, you know, if you've got like an interview situation, you know, like so say you've got, you know, 5 or, you know, let's make it even 6 places available, you know, that people are interviewing for, and you know, of all the candidates that show up, it's 50-50, and like, you know, 50%, I would expect that 50% of the places would approximately go to men and 50 go to women. You know, that's kind of the thing. I think that maybe that's something that you could aspire to. I mean, really, you should just go to the best candidate. But I could imagine that something like that might happen. You know, all things being equal. You know, all things like that, men and women are, you know, equally proficient in whatever. You know, fine. But the thing is, when you're in like a situation, when you're hiring, and you're not getting, like, it's not 50-50, it's not 50-50 distribution in terms of gender and like who's turning up for the interview. Why would you expect to hire, you know, to give half the posts, you know, half the jobs to women? It doesn't make sense, because it's unlikely. You know, just given like, just assuming that you've got the same distribution of like skills and competence between men and women, then you'd expect that approximately the same proportion, you know, same amount of men and women were like adequate for the job. But what tends to happen is like you get, you know, much fewer women applying for technical jobs. So to go from there to expect that it should be 50-50 parity, then surely that's not fair. Because what you're saying is, you know, you're necessarily, to get it to 50-50 parity, you're obviously choosing women over men on purpose. But that's, you know, there's no, the maths doesn't work out any other way. And so, I brought this up. And so like my friend said, yeah, but you know, there's obviously a problem if there are less women wanting to be computer programmers. And so, you know, this made me think. And so it's not just like computer programmers that are overrepresented by men. There's lots of things in the world like that. So for instance, I'm into heavy metal. You know, that's like my thing. That's my favourite music. And you know, my like, obviously it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but like my circle of friends, like when I was growing up, also were, because like the ones that weren't sort of like dropped off the friend group and, you know, stuff like that. And so, but I didn't know any girls who were into heavy metal. I mean, we could go to like a club, like, you know, and a heavy metal night, and there'd be loads of girls there. But it's not like, you know, it's very skewed. You know, there are more male heavy metal fans than there are female heavy metal fans. Right. Now, is that a problem? Is that something that needs addressing? You know, should we strive? You know, should any effort whatsoever at all be made to address this balance that women don't like heavy metal. I mean, should we make metal more accessible for women? Should it doesn't make sense because it's. I think everyone would accept that your musical preference is just like it's a musical preference, isn't it? I mean, I personally, I can remember like all my life, just when I'd hear certain sounds and I'd go, whoa, I like that. And like, the sound of an electric guitar was just something that did that for me. Interestingly enough, the sound of synthesizers tends to do that for me as well. There's certain like electronic sounds that I really, really like. But, in general, it's kind of like, it's the rock music that it's what I like. It's what I listen to. So, but, I don't think that anyone's really going to argue that, all gender disparities need to be addressed, because fundamentally, if everything isn't a 50-50 split, then it's obviously due to some kind of, indoctrination or, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And so, my friend actually conceded that, well, perhaps, you do need to take into account, the people going in for, being interviewed, for instance. Maybe, how would it be? Imagine there was like 2 jobs and 99 men were interviewed and 1 woman was interviewed for it. And, one goes to a woman and 1 goes to a man. Statistically speaking, I find that very hard to believe that, it'd be unlikely, statistically speaking, that, the one woman would be the best person for the job. But I'm not saying it shouldn't. I'm not saying it shouldn't or couldn't, but it's just unlikely, let's face it. But like the world that we're pushing towards seems to, say, well, we need it to be fair. And this kind of, fairness, when people talk about fairness in a way, quite often, that like, if my child was to say, it's not fair, you'd sort of like give them a bit of a pep talk about it, like, what do you mean? Sort of like try and help them set their expectations in terms of, if something just isn't fair, then it's like, yeah, you're right, it's just not fair. But, a lot of things, it's just like when people say it's not fair, they just mean it's not what I want. And that's what children tend to do, when they say, oh, it's not fair, they really mean, I wanted something else to happen. So, it's kind of, it leads on to another thing. It's like, why should private companies be there to like enforce fairness? Now that's something I really don't get. It's like, we need fairness in the gender distribution, in the gender demographic of our company. It's like, why? Why is it just like certain companies that can do it? I mean, I know it's said quite often, but it's like, in terms of like, hiring, racial, demographics and stuff, it's surely in that way it's kind of more, there's got to be less difference between like men of different ethnicities than there are of like a man of the same ethnicity with another woman of that same ethnicity. So what I'm trying to say is like, I'm probably much more similar to a black guy or a Chinese guy or an Indian guy or whatever than I am to like just a woman. You know, there's lots of like traits that all the guys have that like aren't shared with women. So in like in that sense, when you're hiring, then you would expect, I think you would expect the racial distribution within the company to directly reflect what it's like in society. Because, you know, men will generally, you know, if you go to a football match in like somewhere like the UK, you know, you definitely see all ethnicities represented there because it's very popular, and in general, you know, there's more men than there are women, but there's more men of all ethnicities. So, you know, you make it that way, you know, what you will. But you know, it's not like, I don't understand why it's like certain things it's obvious that we need to make things fairer. Like you know, so would anyone say that, you know, like you know, the classic and the NBA is obviously overrepresented. You know, black guys are well overrepresented, especially like when you think of like I think the population of I mean, this might be wrong, but I think it's like 10% black in the US, something like that. So, you know, there's many more than 10% black people in the NBA. In fact, you know, it's probably quite, you know, the opposite. You know, to see someone who isn't black is quite like the outlier. But it's not a problem because these guys are just paid for how good they are at basketball. And if it just happens to be that, like, you know, black guys are better at basketball, then so be it. You know, it's a sport. I don't think any sports fan would actually rather see, you know, a bad team just on ideological grounds of them being like the same ethnicity as they are. But you know, so for some reason it's like we need to strive for this in like, you know, intellectual pursuits or something. You know, I don't get it. I am just putting this out there because like it's, you know, I don't understand. Well, here's where I'm going with this. So I don't understand why we do this, but I kind of do. Because it sort of all comes down from like this feeling of like that you are your brother's keeper. You know, that, you know, you know, society, like lords, democracy, it's always going on about, you know, democracy and voting and all this. And that's where you are actually imposing your will on other people. You know, that's what, I mean, that is what you're saying. You are actually saying, I want this, and I want you to live like this, because this is what voting is. You know, the collective understanding is that, you know, when the results come out, everyone has to live under the same rules. So, you know, you are absolutely saying, I want you to live like this. And so, this kind of like push to, you know, for this like fairness, it's like recognizing that, you know, even democracy is not enough because some people might vote against it. But, you know, at work, you can't vote against it. You know, I mean, it's like, it's literally that, you know, you literally can't complain. I mean, I don't feel like that I want to complain about it. I mean, I couldn't care less. I mean, especially like the women that, I think one of the things that you do find in terms of women who are in fields are not that are traditionally male dominated, that like the women that I find that I work with are very good. You know, they are above average in terms of you know, they are just, I think they are better than the average man who works there. But why is that? Well, probably because they haven't just taken up this career by inertia. For instance, I know loads of programmers who like just became programmers because they didn't know what else to do. Which is like, yeah, kind of like playing computer games and and that's kind of like where I didn't just take this, I'm not a programmer through inertia, because I was a physicist and I decided to be a programmer, and because I really wanted to be. And so I think that shows through as well when, just in your general day-to-day, the way you work and things, when you actually like your job. That's one of the things that my wife often comments with me is like, at least like I like my job. I have spent time, my own personal time, messing about, doing my own little programming projects and stuff like that. I like doing it. And that's, that's kind of what my job is anyway. Alright, so these projects that I do are obviously what other people want me to do. But, when I'm just like left to my own devices and I've got some kind of logical problem that I need to solve via code, or like there's a system that I can't get to work because, it's got a bug and I need to fix it, I love that. I really enjoy that. So I think that that's probably what happens with women who, go into male-dominated things is that, it's not the easy path for them. So they tend to be better. But if we sort of like, if we lose that, then it's kind of a shame. It kind of like, it hurts the highly motivated, competent woman who's like there, doing good work. And I've never seen, I'm getting a bit long in the tooth now, I'm nearly 50. So I've been doing this for like, a few years. And I've never seen any kind of like sexist behaviour or anything like that. Mostly because a lot of like the guys, here's another thing. So it's like, a lot of programmers are kind of, you can just see they're just like on the spectrum. You can just, they're awkward in social situations and, the whole lot. And like, men are overly represented in autism, and that kind of thing. So that's another reason why there's more programmers who are men than women, because like the kind of, there's lots of people where like to actually be a kind of like obsessive around certain things, it actually helps you in your work. So like more men are just like that. And you just look at the way a load of programmers are dressed and like, just what they're like in social situations, and they're a complete disaster. But it's like it helps them in the job. So like that's another thing that's obviously not, inculcated in boys over girls. It's just like you're just born like that. Autism's like a real thing. Some people are just, the people are just on the spectrum, and it's a lot more men than women. So what are you going to do about that? I don't know. I have a real problem with this whole, blank slate type of theory of, child raising or something. I don't understand why we think. I think it's kind of arrogant to say that like humans are so different. We're like completely different animals, that we don't come with any sort of like software pre-installed. It's like, because like, so I've had a few dogs in my life, and like all of them have got different personalities. They're just different, and even from a puppy, they're just different. You just know that this dog is the way it is. And you see that in people as well, obviously. People, even from like just thinking about my daughters, they were just from like, literally days old. You could see personality traits in them that, just obviously, become more formed and accentuated or whatever, but, there were certain things about them from when they were days old that you could already see, even like my son as well. I'm just like thinking of specific instances. So it's like, can what's the end goal? Are we literally saying that we want to produce people who are just completely interchangeable cogs in like the whole of society, in the world? I mean, it just seems so horrible. People are different, and that, that's a good thing. And we have different, different preferences, and and I don't understand why that's not a good thing. And it's like, if a girl doesn't want to be a programmer, then she's been corrupted or something. It's like, it's the whole STEM argument. There are not enough women in STEM. It's like, well, girls don't really like STEM. I mean, when I did my A levels, it was like me, another lad, and everyone else was girls. That was, I'm not saying this because I was like, some kind of misogynist or something, but that was a reflection of the fact that most lads drop out. In like where I grew up, there weren't a lot of lads doing A levels. The girls could like had the sense to like think that they needed to, get to some kind of higher education at least, that time, to actually make something of their life. Whereas like the lads just wanted to get out of school, and I'd get mocked. I remember walking home from sixth form and some lad saying to me, "I earn £100 a week." Like, he earns £100 a week. And that was like, to me at the time, I thought, wow, that's a lot of money. But he's probably still only earning £100 a week, like 30 years later. And that's that's another issue. But anyway, I don't know if I'm completely out of touch with like, people watching this or what, but I'm just curious as to the fact, it's like, I think maybe it's the fact that I'm a big believer of like self-ownership and, taking responsibility for your life. It's like, I obviously wouldn't want to feel that like I'm being controlled by all these outside forces, but I really think that I do have a license to choose. I can I'm free in the sense of I can do, I have agency. And I think everyone does. So I find it curious, that some people literally like really do believe that people are getting moulded on purpose. And even if that's the case, it's like, it's not that, like, the argument isn't, hey, people shouldn't get moulded on purpose. It's like, no, people need to be moulded in this way. And that's that's like the whole problem. Like with the state is like that. Everyone just accepts, well, we need the evil of the state because otherwise everything would be terrible and like there'd be no roads. And it's just not the case. But in the same way, no one can see past, maybe we shouldn't raise, boys and girls in the sense that we're like making them do things. That's it, isn't it? We shouldn't also raise boys and girls to think that they need a state. But no one seems to have any problem with that at all. So anyway, that's my lunch done. I'll if anyone's still watching, thank you very much. If anyone wants to leave a comment, please do. And I'll probably be back next week. It's Thursday now, and I have a house full of people tomorrow. So thanks for watching. See you around.